I'm Kev Roberts, the host of Northern Soul Time. With me is somebody I've known since he was about 12, I think. And he's got his own event that he's promoting. He's a veteran already. And boy, does he promote Northern Soul big time throughout the UK. Jordan Wilson is with us, and I'm glad to have you here as well, Jordan. How are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm honoured to be here today, actually.
Thank you very much for helping us. First of all, tell us how you got started, because we know you were young because the branding of the Wigan Young Souls, which we'll get to later, but you were very, very young. You're still very young. Tell us how you got started. I mean, you were certainly in the right area for it when you were Wigan.
Definitely. Being from Wigan, born, bred Wigan. Everybody thinks that my parents were into it when they wasn't. When I first appeared going to local soul nights and attending all-nighters, I always got that attached to me that, oh, well, his mum and dad were into it and records got passed down. That wasn't the case. It never has been the case. Being from Wigan, it's a funny one, really. When the Grand Arcades, you know, the shopping centre in Wigan, so when that was being built, I remember walking through that, and obviously they've got all the memorabilia on the walls and the casino cafe thing, So I remember walking through that with my dad and pointing it out and just being intrigued by what it was. And obviously it's my hometown. I've always took an interest in local history, whether it be buildings, Wigan Pier, music, everything like that.
Because initially, sorry to interrupt you, initially it was an unfashionable town for Northern Soul. I mean, obviously now it's the top of the tree in terms of people knowing what it is. But back then, I remember even prior to landing a gig there, it was really only known, this is for outsiders, as Eddie Waring and Rugby League.
Yeah. I can imagine.
That's how it was, but it quickly took a toehold, and boy, that legacy has been incredible, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. So, obviously, walking through that Grand Arcade shopping centre and seeing all them things on the wall, and then I started to ask my dad about it. So my dad, in the 70s, attended local youth clubs. These lads were playing records at these places, Birchley St Mary's in Billings, just outside of Wigan. But my dad never really dived any deeper into it. He had 2 children, settled down with his first wife, and then that was it. He never ventured any further into it other than the youth club kind of set up. So what I'm trying to say is he knew what it was, but it's like everybody was into that back then, wasn't they? To my understanding. You were in, like, you were either into soul, you was into glam rock, maybe.
Yeah, I mean just soul or pop. I mean,
pop music.
If you ever stood on the stairs and were coming into the all-nighter, because remember it started at 2 a.m. Which was, I've always tried to figure out why, but of course they had a night before. They had a top 30 night or whatever. First of all, and they'd be coming out, I think, at 1:30, and they got 30 minutes to clear the tables. There's a whole different barrage of people arrived, which was bizarre, to say the least. But that's how it was. You were either into Bay City Rollers, T-Rex, you know, things like that, or you're into soul.
So when I started getting an interest in it, he kind of had a basic understanding of it and really liked that I was kind of getting into it. And then I discovered the This England footage on YouTube. And I think for me, especially being a male and somebody who was 13, 14 at that time, to see people expressing themselves and just being able to dance so freely like that, it really interested me. And then from there, I started just attending like the local soul nights, and then got an interest in records, which
which is fatal.
Oh yeah. I did get warned about that, you know, but chose not to listen and kind of got a bit obsessive with buying records.
At Wigan Casino, from a DJ point of view, we've all got a different aspect on what was the most popular record there. At this moment, I want to bring in an artifact that you've brought today. which is remarkable. I've never seen it before, but of course I was one of the guys that actually played it when discovered at that time. And originally it was discovered by a character called Simon Susam. Other people I've heard have said, well, no, so-and-so did, so-and-so. That's up for conjecture, who knows. But one thing's for sure, it made its name at Wigan Casino as You Don't Love Me by Moses Smith.
Oh, right, yes, yeah.
And that's the way we had it, that's the way originally on acetate, that's the way we played it, until it was quickly discovered that it actually had been released on Sandbag. We can get into the full history of it maybe another time or later on, but just show us this, Jordan.
Yeah.
Just hold that up.
So
explain what this is.
So it's a studio acetate. It's the first mix of You Don't Love Me. It's got the different intro on it, and it's a complete different mix as well. It's a really loud mix. You can almost hear every instrument. It's like it's like their multi-channels have not been mastered and mixed correctly yet. But I think, to my understanding, this is the acetate that Bob Palladino sent to Sandbag Records.
Okay.
To try and get them to release it. It does have his telephone number on it as well, and his name wrote on it. And then it came also with
the lyric sheet.
Yeah, the lyric sheet, which is handwritten as well. Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. What I mean, not only an incredible item, but started in Wigan, and it's with somebody from Wigan.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
which is fantastic.
Yeah, I suppose that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, I think as time has gone on, it's certainly in the top 3 or 4 most popular records ever played at Wigan Casino. I think it dipped off for a little while, and there were maybe moments at Wigan Casino when it was discovered that there may be tracks that were a little bit more popular. But I don't think you can argue with the texture of the song, the way the guy sang it.
Incredible.
The production from Tony Camillo is outstanding. It's just one of those gems, and I think even my good friends in the USA often talk about it and say, wow, how the heck did we all miss that?
It is. It's a totally timeless record.
It is.
I can spin that anywhere, and I know that I'm going to get a good dance floor reaction to it. It's one of them, isn't it? The only downside to this acetate is I wish it had the B-side on it, because the B-side is fantastic.
Were you? Yeah, which is also superb. You're from Wigan, Jordan. You've lived through all the revivals and reunions and all the social media and everything we didn't have back in the 70s. The spectre of Wigan Casino. Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? Does it bring in arguments? Are you a fan of Wigan Casino? Do you like talking about it, or do you just want to move on?
That's quite a difficult question to answer. I'm a fan of Wigan Casino, of course I am. I'm quite proud of it, but it does kind of latch onto you a little bit, and especially with this new revival that's kind of happening now. And actually, talking about revivals, I did used to always find it funny when I was like 15, 16, and I used to get booked to do the Wigan Casino anniversary nights, you know, and I used to think, you know, I wasn't even born when this was all happening, but yeah, it does latch onto you a little bit. But the music that came out of that club was absolutely incredible. And I think we have a bit of a playlist, don't we, of this is a Wigan record, and that can sometimes be a little bit limited. But the other music that came out of that club, and sometimes I think people don't realise that was actually a Wigan record. I think one of the spins over the last few years has been The Limitations' Lonely I'm Troubled, which I was really surprised at was a Wigan record for a brief period of time. Yeah,
apparently so. I mean, the one. I mean, there's many I can think of that probably had an airing there. But certainly things like I Still Love You, the Seven Souls. Got an airing there. I know because I played it. But it went down disastrously bad. And it took probably about another 15 years for people to say, you know what, this is great. It was just the moment in time. You've got to remember, everybody was pretty much a similar age in the early 70s at the casino. And there was also a great energy. When you're 17, 18, 19 years old, you've got a lot of energy. So that ups the tempo somewhat. You're not at 45 RPM, you're at 48, 49 really. And so therefore, that's why there were so many songs or tracks that aren't really happening anymore. I mean, Afternoon of the Rhino is a classic. I mean,
you can imagine that.
The footage, I know the footage is quite rare to find, but anybody who's got any footage of that would find it unbelievable, with the people clapping and, you know, the champion, Willie Mitchell. But some of those tracks now, Cochise is another one by Paul Humphrey, that are a little bit out of favour, but in the moment they were incredible.
Somebody once gave me a collection of cassette tapes, and one of them was Cleethorpes Pier, and So Is the Sun was being played. Oh my God, you cannot, I know it's a cassette tape recording, but the thumping of the feet on that dance floor. So I can imagine, But I'm very proud of the whole Wigan Casino thing, and I think it's great. I just think there's a lot more as well, isn't there? There's a lot more happening, and it's kind of always the focus point on everything, maybe for the right reasons.
Wigan? Yeah, but look, everybody's now hopped on and hopped off the bus. Some have stayed with it throughout their lives. I think we could be immensely proud of it. I know most people around the world, when I've been in different countries, if Northern Soul's ever cropped up, you know, they thank us for it.
But when I first started discovering the music, and like I said before, discovered that This England footage and seen the energy from that footage and seeing how these young girls, lads dance to that, that is what got me kind of interested in it all, and wanted and propelled me to go out and discover. You can go to all-nighters and the likes.
So you started out extremely young. Favourite record from early age of discovery is what?
This record right here. We've got propped up, so obviously going out to the local Wigan nights and going to all-nighters, and I was always delving into cassette tapes. Mixcloud was great for me because people had uploaded Richard Serling sets, and from an early age I can remember messaging Richard and saying, you know, he's introducing these records with a cover-up name.
Of course,
and
he was into that. He was into that.
So I used to send him messages on Facebook and phone him up and be like, what is this record? What's the real name of this record? And so one of them was the Fluffy Falana track, and I absolutely loved this record when I first got into it. I really, really did. And this was the time when my collection was changing, because I had no guidance. Like I said, my mum and dad wasn't into it. I had nobody kind of like pushing me along. This is when I'm like 14. And I was only going to local Wigan Soul nights. And so I used to go to one soul night in particular, and there was a guy selling records there. I used to I know this sounds quite cliche to say, but I used to save up my dinner money. That my mum and dad would give me like £3 a day dinner money, and it sounds a bit like a throwback story.
Well, then you wouldn't eat
literally
for 3 weeks.
Yeah. It's a different story now, like, but And I used to have little money bags onto my bed to put this money in. Anyway, so when I started collecting original vinyl, and then suddenly you start realising these records are a lot more pricier than your British press, £10-20, you know. Sweet, Sweet Lovin', the platters on pie and stuff like that. And I heard this record on an old cassette tape, Mixcloud recording, something like that. And I found that Sean Chapman had one for sale on his website. So it was £150. And it took me a while, but I reserved it with Sean, saved up my dinner money, but then realised, how am I going to get this, like, you know, hoard of £1 coins to Sean? So I had to go down and say to my dad downstairs, I said, look, Dad, I said, I know it seems a bit mad, but there's this record for sale. It's £150. I've got all this money that you've actually give to me, and now I'm going to give it you back. Can you please bank transfer, PayPal this money to this guy? So he's like, what?
And it's a bizarre title and a bizarre artist. I might actually put this down if I have ever saw it back in the day. Fluffy Falana, the artist. The title, My Little Cottage Down by the Sea.
Yeah, so this record then arrives in the post, and I've got, like you say, what a title. So I've got to then open this up, and my dad's like saying, right, you've spent £150 on this record, what is it? So I'm like, oh my.
Yeah.
So it's called Fluffy Falana and My Little Cottage by the Sea. So you can imagine what he said, can't you? You can imagine what he said.
You've been robbed.
Yeah, you've been robbed. But I think I think that was a pretty good buy for
a very good buy
for £150.
And, you know, we'll come back to the old days. We must all now realise how undervalued. I know people always say the same thing, but the wages were a lot less. Of course they were. But these records, I can assure you, were very rare back then, extremely rare. So when people say, oh, what do you think about Yvonne Baker selling for £1,500? No surprise at all. I'm not saying I welcome it or I'm against it, but the reality is that these records were very, very hard to find from the get-go.
I can understand that, and I always remember, going back to my dad again, and then what we touched on earlier about the youth club thing, he always said that the most like in vogue record of that time when he was going to a youth club was Backfield in Motion.
A tremendous song.
But he could not get a copy of this record. He wanted one, but just couldn't get a copy of this record, until I think it came out on...
Concord.
Yeah, until it got pressed in the
It was
UK,
a 1969 hit. Produced by Gene Chandler for Mel and Tim. It was just one of those that broke out.
But you're not going to find...
Radio played it a little bit in those days.
Unless, you know, if you was going to Wigan years ago and collecting import records and you knew what you was doing, you're not going to find these records, are you, in a charity shop in Wigan Town Centre now? They're not going to be sat there. Like, I think people think from an outside that you're just going to stumble across these records.
Do you look?
I do, yeah. I never find nothing. Because every so often you do hear of that one story.
Is that because all the managers say, if you're looking for singles, by the way, Jordan Wilson was in yesterday?
Probably, maybe, yeah. And I've never found anything at a car boot either. I get up and I drive to these places and I hype myself up thinking I'm going to find something. I never seem to do.
Because there must be an enormous amount of vinyl, Northern Soul vinyl, in that region, though, because of the nature of what stood there for many, many years.
Do you think, though?
Well, probably people, dipped in and out.
With rare imports.
Well, I've come across people in the past where, there's a stash of Rick Astley CDs, but at the side is a few singles, and why are they here?
Yeah.
And the person said, I was into it between 1975 and 77.
But I think the closest I've got, actually, is I think this was in a charity shop once in Wigan, and all the records had been replaced, but they still had like Bernard Williams, Needless to Say, wrote on the top.
Oh dear, what a tease!
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I think I was a bit depressed after that. Yeah.
Wigan Casino's best record, in your opinion, is from Cecil Washington.
Yeah.
I Don't Like to Lose.
Yeah. This record right here,
out of Detroit, and discovered late on. In fact, my colleague Richard Serlin really championed this single, and again, it's lasted a heck of a long time. Its reputation, everything about it has been terrific. like so many brilliant records, they take a bit of a while. Although there weren't many copies of it around.
To me, this record it's Northern Soul to me. It's timeless, still fills a dance floor no matter where you play it, but it's dark, isn't it? It's a really, it's a dark record, and that is what I've always enjoyed about the scene. I've always enjoyed the dark corners of the dance floor, you know, losing yourself to a sound.
And in like true Motown style as well, they made it busy. They had got something to aim for because they knew the Funk Brothers and what was going on in Detroit at Motown. If they wanted to get close, and they got those ingredients, wasn't quite right. The magic wasn't quite right, but the way he sings it was, you know, you see, I don't like to lose, and then in come the busy girls in the background. I don't like it. I don't like.
I'll walk all over you. I'll do it today.
They got all all the fills right, all the busyness right, all the atmosphere. But as you say, it was dark, and too dark to be a hit.
And you know what? I always wonder this. Who was the audience for this record when that was recorded?
Motown. Had such a stranglehold.
I know, but that isn't Jimmy Mac dancing in the street, is it?
It's not. But they probably thought we can get close to that. You know, don't forget, for every David Ruffin, there'd be an Emmanuel Lasky, a Melvin Davis, a Cecil Washington. So I can understand why, and they did a pretty good job. But there was only so much airtime. There was only so you're right. So then we're back to the negative, which is, who are they trying to appeal to? But you never know that there may have been a bit of an audience. I remember interviewing Gino Washington, not the Gino Washington who resides in the UK, the Gino Washington from Detroit, and he said to me, yeah, we've got a little action on the Tamangos. I Really Love You. Different record entirely, of course. But I'd say to myself, well, like you, who want to buy that? Apart from some crazy kids in the UK. But actually, he did get some kind of traction. Probably not much, but there might have been a little AM radio station somewhere in Michigan that said, you know, bring the Tamangos in for an interview. It's fantastic. I'm going to play the heck out of it. And it might have sold 37 copies in Saginaw. Or you know, or some other place, but that was the end of it. It was never, because it always is going to be up against the Temptations, you know, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, or Smokey, you know, and then you've got all the other labels from Memphis. So it was a very tough business.
This record for me, this made it worthwhile. When, you know, used to get the train to Nottingham. And go to an all-nighter, or come into the Tower or the King's Hall. That's the type of record that I used to be interested in. Well, still am interested. That's the record that would get me up on the dance floor.
Our mutual friend Richard Serlin had great ears for that. He saw a good song, something spiritual that could happen inside that building. Which was difficult, let me tell you. You've got to give him credit for that, because it would have been very easy to drift into a more commercial sound, which we all did. You know, it was hard to get away from in my days, in the early days. Goodbye, Nothing to Say. You know, it was hard. It's very easy to say, "Oh, you didn't play that, did you?" When you've got a lot of people asking for it, you know, it's either that or you're on your bike. So you have to play DJ. But you also have to be a leader as well. And I think the back end of Wigan Casino, the sort of 1979 period, it needed some oomph. It needed something, and I think Richard brought it with that particular type of song.
This was covered up as Joe Matthews, wasn't it?
As well? It was a Detroit legend himself.
Here's a question for you then, Kev. So, in today's world, how do you feel about a cover-up now? Obviously, we have connected with them artists. What is their opinion on a cover-up?
I think it's fascinating.
Giving a blank label to a record and changing the name.
It wasn't anything for me. I probably was working a bit fast and loose in those days. I'd got good connections stateside to get records, so I thought it would never end. I thought that the day I got A World Without Sunshine, Sandra Phillips, or Willie Hutch, The Duck, next week I'd get 2 more just like it. That wasn't to be the case. So when the covering up really started, I mean, it's always happened, I think, really. I think there's always been somebody's put a label. I've had friends who say, oh, Los Canarios, get on your knees. I remember covering that up in 1968. I'm thinking, what? But I think it's fascinating. And again, going back to Wigan Casino covering up records, and particularly the ones in the late 70s, there's now endless stories and debate about them on social media. So it was proved to be right.
Yeah. I've always just been in that middle ground. I don't know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing to cover up a record. I know it's very, very hard unless you've got maybe an unissued record to do it with today, you know, because I think everything's been played somewhere. But, you know, now we've connected with these artists and, you know, we know the stories, the struggles. Is it the right thing to do now? I don't know. But
everything's out there, isn't it? Everybody can Google something.
Yeah, but I suppose back then it really did get a following for records like that.
So my guest today, Jordan Wilson's favourite Wigan Casino anthem, comes from Detroit, and it's by Cecil Washington and the group I Don't Like to Lose. So Jordan, thanks for coming in and sharing your memories of Wigan, although you weren't there, and really getting into it and looking at it from your perspective as a person who's lived through it from a very young age to your current young age. And we'll catch up with you again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kev. It's been an honour to be here today. Absolutely loved it.
Hey, thanks for watching. See you next time for another episode of Northern Soul Time. To listen to some of the great music we've been talking about today, click the links below. If you want to buy great Northern Soul music, visit charlydirect.com.